We started tonight, so thank you everybody for joining. We're gonna just do a quick roll call. Christy?
Here.
Steve?
Here.
Brooke?
Yeah.
Tim?
Here.
Nick, I'm here. Brian, are you there? He's added here.
Great.
Okay, all right. And you said Mizan has a excuse absence.
Yes, he did let me
Okay.
know in advance.
All right, great. Let's go on to our land acknowledgement statement. So we acknowledge that we are on the indigenous land of the Coast Salish peoples who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. I wish I knew how to pronounce that. Sudok Alpix? Anybody know?
I believe that's
Oh,
correct.
find out next time. Okay. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial. Okay, on to the agenda. So hopefully everyone had a chance to review the minutes from last time. Any discussion? No? Can we have a motion to approve last month's minutes?
Move we approve the minutes.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of approving last month's minutes, say aye.
Aye.
What opposed? All right, our minutes pass. Okay, Rose, I believe we have public comment tonight.
We do. Did
Yes.
we do an approval of the agenda as well?
Um,
Oh,
we'll go, I should have packaged them both.
You-
Okay.
Yeah, just for,
We'll go back to you. Okay.
no worries.
Can I get someone to make a motion to approve the agenda for tonight?
I move we approve the agenda.
Okay.
Second.
Second, all right, all in favor of approving tonight's agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, the agenda motion passes.
Great. And then for public comment, we did have 2 written email public comments that were sent earlier today, and then we have 1 public comment in the room. So-
Shows up online, right?
Yes, so Paul
So,
Stickney is,
Do I go up there?
yeah, feel free wherever you're most comfortable. End of the table works great.
Yeah, just
Paul
gonna-
Stickney talking about housing.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna hand a couple things down, 4 at a time. This is FYI for all of you guys. And it's not about town center that much. It's about a citywide housing. It's a way different issue. Okay. There's 4 and 4. Matt, I got extra.
There you go.
And then Paul, whenever you're ready, just let me know and I'll start that timer.
All right, ready to rock.
Since I got jelly beans.
Okay.
Good evening, Sustainability Commissioners, Paul Stickney, Sammamish. This comment is part and parcel with the email I sent today and my record on the city's civic website. I handed out a package of jelly beans. These are to commemorate a past president of the United States, Ronald Reagan, who had a quote that I like very much and applies: trust but verify. Next, I want to talk about 93 million miles. This is how far Earth is from the sun approximately. We're not upset at this number because the number isn't important. What is are the effects of being in the habitability zone around our star. Hold on to this thought. The issue in Sammamish as a whole is housing supplies are not in the habitability zone of 23,000 households and 7,000 workforce jobs over cycle of life and for generational housing needs. Our community has extreme undersupplies of affordable housing. I call A housing from 175 to 500,000. Market rate housing from 500,000 to 1.4 million. Condominiums over 1.5, we don't have any. And we have oversupplies of single family homes priced at 1.5 million plus. On a citywide scale, I don't mean to scare anyone, but A, B, and C housing shortages for optimal sustainable housing are between 10 and 26,000 housing units. For the 2025 to 2044 comprehensive plan, I propose adding 5,000 B and C housing units to the 2,100 A housing units that are in the comp plan. 7,100 total. This is roughly 70% of the lowest threshold for optimal housing supplies. 7,100 A, B, and C housing units have equal effect from a traffic perspective of 4 to 1, about 1,800 single-family homes. Over 20 years, that averages 90 single-family homes a year average. It's also less than 1/3 of the growth our community has seen since we incorporated 25 years ago. Our community needs to pivot fearlessly and use the power of common cause to implement a thorough, rigorous, and fair approach to set habitability supply numbers that are trusted and verified for A, B, and C housing. Our city is 10 to 20 years past due from starting to attain righteous, optimal cycle of life and generational housing supplies. And as Captain Picard said from Star Trek, make it so.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, thank you.
It was exactly 3 minutes.
That was, you got it down. And that is the only public comment tonight.
Okay, and did we say, okay, I'm not sure who is this, Matt, is that you on the?
Yes,
Okay,
that's me.
okay, all right.
There's no one with their hands raised.
Oh,
online.
okay, yep.
Yeah.
Where's Mary?
She sometimes gives comment, but not every time. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the agenda. So first up tonight, we have a town center plan and code amendment project update. And so Matt, you're with the Department of Community Development?
I am,
Okay,
yes.
great. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Should I go ahead?
please.
Yeah, I'm Matt Brainmeyer. I'm the Deputy Director of Community Development. I've been here for about 7 months, so I'm kind of still ramping up and learning everything, but I'm in fact, I came to Sammamish, work for Sammamish because of the town center project. And so I've been immersed in it for the past 7 months, but you know, I have worked on several town centers in my career. Let's say 4 or 5 of them, and you know, I've learned a lot, and I hope I can bring something to the table. And as we update our plan and code and kind of take these steps.
Maybe at the end, we can ask you about some lessons learned on those other town center projects.
Well, that's interesting because it is one of the factors, I think, which I'll mention as I present, because there is a lot to, you know, that has been learned over the past 20 years. Town centers are I don't want to say they're new, but you know, like they came into fashion in the late 90s and you know, they were being built in the 70s and that sort of thing, but they didn't really take off until there was a wave of excitement and planning for walkability and kind of new urbanism and sustainability and all these big questions that were happening. And a lot of suburbs were moving towards more town center type of developments, but the early ones I think weren't done as well. There are some that are great, I gotta tell you, some that are really great, but others that were they didn't really check off all the boxes. You know, they feel kind of contrived. They feel like, you know, it's just another shopping center. There's some that are, you know, you have your development, then you have surface parking lots all around. You have thousands and thousands of parking spaces, you know, all around. You have some that are right next to interstates. You have some that, you know, just don't operate or function like a town center where, you know, there's major roadways going through them and, you know, that cars speed by and that sort of thing. So lots of lessons that have been learned. Let me ask you before I begin, do I have a time limit?
No, you don't.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, kind of as a reminder to everyone, we had David Pyle, who works very closely with Matt, come and present on the comprehensive plan at one of our previous meetings. And so that was really looking at the city as a whole. And he talked a lot about how town center plays into each of those different areas of the comprehensive plan. So today's the opportunity to get kind of that next level down, like actually getting into the meat of the town center. So just kind of level setting where this fits with some of the other concepts that we've talked about.
So I just have about 10 slides. You know, the reason for me being here is we're just looking to kind of promote and kind of get a conversation continuing and, you know, transparency and make sure that everyone's aware of what is going on. Before I really begin though, so is everyone familiar with the town center and where it is? Yeah, okay, so it's 240 acres. It's right in the center of town, kind of, you know, squarely at, 228, and then 4th Street is right in the middle. City Hall is down here, is within the town center. You have Sammamish Commons. You have several projects that have been built. You have the Sam Apartments, you have the Village and Sky Apartments, you have the townhomes. Aegis is going to build a assisted living center on the east side of 228. Currently on just south on 4th, I know it's hard to see my cursor, but if you drive on 4th past this site, you'll see a big hole. They're building a stormwater vault. It's a multi-site, kind of a regional stormwater vault that's going to serve several of those developments. So it's something that we encourage them to do. But there's 2 townhome developments that are being built in this area, and then we're receiving plans very soon for really the first development in the core area, and that is there are 2 mixed-use buildings that are being proposed. They received an entitlements a couple years ago, and they've been working towards permit, since then. It's kind of been a slow go. The market hasn't been the best. Interest rates and then also demand for apartments has been pretty low, but they are moving forward.
So when you say mixed use, is that like commercial or business on the first floor and
Yeah.
then residential above it?
That's exactly right. And that's a key component. It's a principle of smart growth, but overall, this idea of mixing uses, and it's very similar to like old downtowns, how they were originally built. And when I talk about new urbanism and smart growth, I mean these things I feel like we kind of lost our way after in the post-war, and then we're trying to reclaim that. Kind of have your corner stores that you can walk to and that sort of thing, and that you have a mix of commercial and housing, that serves that neighborhood. So this is really a neighborhood that we're proposing to develop.
And those
Yes.
mixed use developments that you mentioned that are being built imminently, are they apartments sold or not in that phase yet?
I'm not sure, but I do think there'll be for rent apartments.
Oh, for rent, okay.
Yeah, there is also another senior living center that is part of that overall phase. But I'm not sure exactly which spot they're gonna be in, but those would be, that's kind of a different arrangement, but the idea is, I'm pretty sure it's gonna be for rent. I don't think it's gonna be condo. So in 2007, the city moved forward with the first step in developing a town center plan by completing an environmental impact statement. Thereafter, the plan was written, and in 2008, the city adopted the original plan. So it's been 17 years since they, really undertook a review of the plan, like we are doing today. And then in 2010, 2011, the city adopted the Town Center Development Code, which is on the books, which I'll talk about in a few minutes.
Is it normal to take that long? That feels like a really long time.
Not really, no. I mean,
Not really normal or not really a long time?
Not really a long time. It's what it takes. I mean, I don't know who did the work, but yeah, that's actually pretty quick. Yeah. I mean, one of the town center plans I did, we adopted the plan and then it took like 5 years to write the code. And so, yeah, it was tough. It was a lot of work. We had a lot of community involvement and a lot of people who weren't, who wanted different things to go in a different direction. So, it took a long time to kind of get everyone on the same page. So what is left to be built? I mentioned all of those developments. There is, you might think there is a lot of land to build on, but there quite frankly isn't. So we start with 240 acres. That's the size of the town center. We have 83 acres that are dedicated to critical areas that will not be touched. The critical area regulations remain in place and, will be enforced. And that includes the stream courses and steep slopes and, that sort of thing. 26 acres is civic area, city hall, the library, the YMCA, all of that would be in there. Right of way is expected to take up 10 acres total. Then we have 32 acres that are either built or, planned for construction very soon. So then
Can you define right of way for us?
It's streets.
Just streets, okay.
Streets and sidewalks essentially. And then that's the remainder then is 89 acres. So in the plan and in the,
What is FEIS?
it's a final environmental impact statement. Yeah. So the original FEIS, which was completed in 2007, evaluated a range of different densities up to 4,000 units. They landed on 2,000 units. Essentially, the conversation was, as a starting point, how dense should the town center be? In the plan, it also tells us to, once we get to a third of those units of the 2,000, we should reevaluate and update the plan, and that's what we're doing. It's actually where, we have 900, well, it's over 1,000 units that have been built or under construction. So we're well past that 1/3 mark.
That is own and rent units, doesn't matter.
Yes, yeah.
So that includes skies, that's MAM,
Yeah,
same apartment building. and other-
it's defined as dwelling units. We don't count ages because they're sleeping units, and as a result, they have different, it's an assisted living center. It's just kind of a, I don't know, kind of a detail of code, but those types of places, senior living have different kind of traffic demands and that sort of thing, so they're treated differently. So that's a remainder of 944 units. Right now we are evaluating up to 4,000 units, which is the same as, the original EIS. And we are, looking at the traffic impacts, the impacts on the environment, impacts on school and utilities and, just everything in order to complete that EIS. On the commercial side, the EIS plan for 600,000 square feet of commercial space. We have about 234,000 that is either built or planned. And that leaves a remainder of 366,000, which we're not proposing to increase.
I'm just curious, what's the interest from the commercial side? Is it local businesses, chains, or?
Well, we are, trying to program a commercial, a mix of businesses that would serve the neighborhood and serve the overall community. It wouldn't be big box, it would be very small footprint, being the first level, the ground floor of mixed use buildings.
Like coffee shops and yoga studios?
That's exactly right. Yeah. So yeah, I can see.
Hardware, it's coming back. right?
Ace Hardware, yeah, that is good. Yeah. And I can kind of see, it could be more of a restaurant district where you have kind of a corner restaurant with outdoor seating and a plaza and all of that. I could see, yoga studios, I could see, like a real estate office or an attorney or accountant's office.
So maybe similar to like the Isle Highlands?
Yes, but not. A little, I think that operates much differently. Yeah, and I'm not familiar enough. I'm just still learning the lay of land. So I don't have great examples. We talk about Redmond's town center being somewhat similar, but it's probably not as dense. But overall, it's typically just kind of smaller shops that's really what we're trying to program and permit through the development code. Ultimately, we're not going to decide exactly what goes there, but we can provide some parameters of those businesses. So why are we updating now? I mentioned that 1/3 trigger, which we have passed. That's certainly one thing, but overall, over the past 17 years, that many things have changed. On the state level, we have multiple mandates that we have to incorporate. David was here talking about the comprehensive plan and the fact that we have to include affordable and diverse housing. We need to do that for the sub area as well. Several things on the regional basis have changed. There's several plans that we need to coordinate with that have a growth target. There's also some regional transportation improvements that have been made that need to be taken into consideration. And then locally, in addition to the comprehensive plan, we also, stated a new vision for the city, kind of a restate. but essentially, enforcing, the city's commitment to the town center.
I think we talked about this with David, but.
Yeah.
Wouldn't there be sustainability requirements built into the development plans, things like LEED certification and certain amount of parking spaces that we'd be able for EV charging for the apartments? We're looking at that sort of things,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
So that'll be my last slide.
Oh, sorry, I'm too excited for the
Yeah.
presentation.
I did mention the EV charging though, I like that.
Yeah, we got some information for you about that.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then also the code, I mentioned the town center code, which, right now, the code is very difficult to administer. It's a little unmanageable and we need to make improvements. And that's been a comment that we've heard from, landowners and developers, I think since it was first, adopted. So we're looking to streamline the code. Let me give you an example. The entitlement process, which when I say entitlement, that means when a project is approved conceptually before permit, they have to take a step to be approved, kind of entitled essentially, they would be vested at that point. Most zoning codes require just one step for that, meaning that there's one entitlement process. Our town center code has two different entitlement processes that can't coincide, they have to be done sequentially. All it does really is, it doesn't do anything for the project, and all it does is make it more expensive. So I'm not sure are you familiar with that, Paul? I'm not sure of the wisdom behind that, but that is one of the things that we need to work on.
And I just want to remind folks, EIS is environmental impact statement that is required by law for us to have for large developments, and small developments. And I think that was all I had to add.
So there's also the question of, the plan, which I think is good, it reads well. I think there's a lot of great statements in there, but it does fall short in a lot of areas and we're looking to improve those. We want to, overall, this is about placemaking. This is about creating a sense of place, kind of a place where we call it a third place, if you've ever heard that term.
Yes.
You have your first place, which is home, the second place which is work, and the third place, which is being out in the community. And, a lot of suburban communities just don't have a place where you're out in the community. You might go to a shopping center, but to have a place where you can celebrate arts and culture, you can have, a film festival or art festival or, different things like that. We want to kind of build off of the commons, adjacent land to that, and kind of build a town square and, have kind of this park place that can be used for the community where you can also walk over and grab a cup of coffee or have dinner, and then, mill about and, see people.
Are you considering like I know you mentioned the Issaquah Highlands, that you're getting familiar with it, but they have a Blakely Hall, which is a great community gathering
Yeah.
place, so they offer.
Yeah.
Is this in the talk, like at all? To put,
Yeah,
like, some
yeah,
sort of community hall indoor, multi-use for
At
book
gatherings,
clubs?
yes. Kind of be careful with that, just because we don't want a big event center. But something more for the community. Yeah, that is part of the
Yeah, it's
discussion.
not quite an event center, but
Right.
it's a really fun place for like play groups to meet and
Yeah.
bigger space than the Y. The Y has little classrooms.
I've been to fundraisers there, nonprofits.
It's beautiful. I mean, you could they have a kitchen in there for cooking classes, they have book club meetings, a play group meets there, the seniors can meet there.
Okay.
They have art shows, Minecraft clubs, I mean, all
My
kinds.
neighbor had his
It's really
birthday
fun.
party there, yeah.
Very
take a
fun,
look at it.
beautiful, and they made it very sustainable, like it's all, like greens, wood, and I'm wondering how much is the council considering making it a model of sustainability, like making some of this stuff like the rain gardens, the rooftop gardens, the reusable
Well,
wood,
okay,
like
so
how much, is that talked about at all?
Yeah, it's, so one of the things that we've been discussing as far as, um, kind of incentivizing, density in return for additional density, a developer would be required to do certain things. We've talked about it in the sense of affordable housing, but we've also talked about it in the sense of sustainability. So, first, just kind of mention the smart growth principles of the town center. It's a compact walkable area development. There's a mix of land uses. You're providing alternatives to driving there, meaning that there should be connections to neighborhoods. You should be able to walk or bike and that sort of thing, if you can get over the hills. And then this park once concept, which means that you would park your car somewhere in the town center and you would leave it there and then be able to walk over to different shops and kind of walk over to different places and enjoy the town center. Whereas in like a typical suburban shopping center, you would likely park one place, go visit the store, go back to your car, move your car to the next place you want to visit. And so the idea is that you're just parking. But overall, the incentives that we've talked about are green building, which would include LEED, include solar, green roofs, water reclamation. We're including low impact development in there. There's a whole host of things that we can use to incentivize, for density. And that's really the exchange, is that you have a base amount of density. If you want to build more, then you have to do these, these kind of green building things.
Do you envision that's how it'd be marketed? So looking for a demographic that wants to live in a green building type structure with sustainable elements?
Yeah, I imagine that, if a developer is putting money into it, I imagine that they'll want to celebrate that.
Yeah.
So, you see the LEED building badges, on buildings, and I think a lot of building owners take pride in that.
So you can't force the builder to do it, but you can incentivize or something the builder to do it?
Well, I mean, we could require it.
Or you
just,
can require it?
out of the gate,
Oh.
but that's not done often, not on a wholesale scale. But we do think that incentives would, be effective in that way.
And we've seen this work in other cities as well. So this is a pretty common practice. The question is just to what level are those there's a lot of different options, kind of a menu of incentives and, density bonuses, if you will. And so it's really just a matter of figuring out what is the best fit for somebody.
And there's a lot of interests and kind of concerns that we need to balance. And so we can't have density without addressing traffic, for example. So we need to be sure that it works. And that's why we do an environmental impact statement in the first place. We need to know that whatever is going to be built isn't going to have a negative impact on it.
Yeah, I would argue too that sustainability doesn't need to come at a premium. There are ways to build infrastructure sustainably. It doesn't necessarily cost a premium.
Yeah.
That's up to the developers. It requires some creativity, but
And saves money in the long run.
we can.
Yeah. So we have our eye on all of that. So one of a big concern is tree retention and our requirements on as far as landscaping goes and that sort of thing. We really rely on kind of the wetlands in the critical areas, to be part of that. But we also need to understand, what rules need to be in place in order to retain trees on site, and if that is even effective. There's a lot of times where, the plan is to save a group of trees or something, but everything around it is changing, the hydrology changes, and and those trees aren't savable in the long run. So we want to be sure of that too. Opportunities for connectivity, we want to make sure that we have a sidewalk system in place that also connects to trails, and overall that you can connect within and beyond the town center.
Okay, how does, maybe a question, the road and maybe earlier, parking once is great, parking
Yeah.
0 times is better. Right, so how do we get, how is it actually going to be accessible outside of just what you get to the town center?
Yeah.
I know. We're obviously on 28, so there's
Yeah.
the bus goes that way, well, that's, you gotta be near 28 people to get on the bus. Like, how else would you?
So transit is gonna be very limited and, just relying on the bus at 228. And it's something that we're, looking at certainly within kind of the scope of the town center, but it's not anything that we're fully relying on. We need to, like, worst case scenarios that someone's gonna drive, so we need to plan for that. But we're hoping that there's additional transit options in the future. And from what I understand, that the more density we have, the more likelihood that there could be a transit center, on 228 that would connect to, Issaquah and Redmond, where the link stations are, and those sort of things. So, there could be future opportunities. But yeah, it's just the bus service on 228.
And then, sorry, I just wanna answer the rest of your question, well, not the rest, but also add, part of what ties into town center is the bike and pedestrian plan.
Yeah.
So that's not just looking at the cars and the transportation master plan, which is looking at transit at that higher level and, our folks in or out of their cars, but this is specifically looking at the walkability and the bikeability within the city and trying to connect some of those cul-de-sacs, improve sidewalk on areas where there's not currently, so all of that will
It's
help
all centered
support.
around this. We're taking into account.
Would take
Yeah.
into
That
account,
this is going to exist. and
So,
that we are
yeah.
making it easy for bikers.
Trying to
Biking down 228, which can be a little
exactly, trying
overwhelming.
to focus some of the areas of the bike and pedestrian plan and getting that community input of like, well, if you live in this area that's not accessible by the bus, how would you get to town center? Would it be through this area or this cul-de-sac or this place that doesn't have a sidewalk or a median currently, and kind of trying to focus and be really smart and intentional about that. Like, we can't build sidewalks everywhere, but where are the most impactful places that we can?
and trails, and multi-use trails.
Yep.
So the city's completing a bike ped plan now. And so we're going to need to link up this plan with that bike ped plan, and then also.
That's the answer. It's all talking to know all the stuff that's happening. Instead, and then you mentioned a bad use case of these town plans is being surrounded like a thing in the middle of an island of a parking lot. There's no space for the parking lot, so when you say park lots, where are the people that do end up driving
Garages.
those those underground garages that are,
Yeah.
I think, were shared with the apartment as well.
So there would be on-street parking, like in a downtown or urbanized place, but the rest of the parking on site will be in a garage, either underground, or you can have some as an above ground structured parking, but we're looking to, there's all kinds of innovative ways where you can still have the commercial, you can still have apartments above, integrated into kind of an overall.
And final one, before I'll shut up. One of the things that works so well in other countries, like Europe or whatever, is like shutting down the streets and not having
Yes.
drivability.
Yeah.
Like, so you're not driving through the middle and
Yeah.
using that street for riding bikes and whatever. And I recognize this is a big hill right here, so maybe not the most walkable street, at least at the one end of it, but I think the consideration of just making, I guess, Fourth Avenue, right, like undrivable.
Well, probably not fourth, but yeah, fifth, I think, or sixth.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's opportunities there. And, to do that on certain days, like maybe on weekends, or maybe on Sunday, or something like that, where we shut it down, it just becomes pedestrian.
It worked during COVID, and this off, Broad Street was
Right, sure
closed
did, right?
Friday to Sunday, right?
Yeah.
So, that is I think something that we would want to mention in the town center plan, but it's more of an operational thing that, we would get to kind of as we plan events and kind of plan, different activities that, throughout the year. It'd be great to have a hard and fast rule that, the interior roads are just, not, you can't drive on them, on certain days. Yeah, I do like that.
I saw another idea, which is to really increase the bike riding, is if you have the sidewalk and then you have the bike path and then you have cars parking there. So that way people feel safer on a bike path if they know parked cars are between them and the road. So I don't know if that, we don't have that wide of roads, so I don't even know if that's
Yeah.
possible, but I know I feel
Capitol Hill.
safer. What was that?
Capitol Hill has that.
It's
Yeah,
the, one of
That's an
the
old street, right?
best ways to increase bike riding, apparently.
I think the dedicated bike lane is really important.
Mhm.
That's a concept that's gained a lot of popularity and being put into law in areas in Seattle. It's called complete streets.
Oh, that's
And it has some pretty cool, like there's a couple different basically
ways to
design
do it.
ideas.
Yeah, so one of the things that we need to do is, and one of the things that the current plan and development code fell short on is we don't have street standards different from kind of our neighborhood, like subdivisions.
Mhm.
So this is different, where you have, it's a complete street where you have the sidewalk, the bike lanes, the on-street parking, and then the travel lane. And so all of that would be incorporated. And that's the idea. Not everywhere though. I mean, it takes a lot of right of way, it takes a lot of, improvements. So, we would look to do that in certain areas, but then other areas would just operate kind of as a regular city street.
What's the city council doing to ensure we're not overwhelming the schools with this? Like, are they working with the schools?
Of course.
They are, to
Yeah,
like make
yeah.
sure, cause
I
that
mean-
font, that didn't pass, right? So I
Yeah.
know people are very concerned,
Yeah.
the skyline's overcrowding and you're putting in 5,000 more people, let's say. What's the plan? Can the builder be, can they be charged with paying for a new school?
They
Or-
are,
They will be.
yeah, so.
How does that work?
There's a few things in place, but we regularly talk to the school districts. And we talk to them about this plan and, in detail and requested comment. And that sort of thing. So, we haven't heard any concerns from them at this point, but part of kind of the EIS in this overall process is to measure the impacts on, on school capacity and utilities and that sort of thing. So yes, absolutely, that's being addressed. There are a couple of items in our code that, and it's, required through the statute. One is concurrency. Before we can issue any kind of building permit or development permit, they need a concurrency certificate, basically establishing that whatever is being built and the services that they're going to use have the capacity. Then there's also impact fees that we charge. So for every new housing unit that is built, they're required to build, I want to say it's around $10,000 per unit. And then that money is given to the schools. So it's growth pays for growth. That's the idea. So similarly, we are talking to each of the utility districts, fire department, we're talking to police, we're talking to just about everyone that will listen to us. So, and really it is, the last thing we would want to do is move forward with a plan that creates a breakdown in one of our services. So no stone unturned.
Of course, this affects all of our metrics in the climate action plan, right?
The good news is, we went over those new building codes that have come into place, so a lot of these new builds are already much lower in terms of the per capita emissions for residents, because you have this density, because you have the energy requirements, because you have built green incentives, so, yeah, it's something that we're considering, and as we look at the impacts of that and also continue to transition our single family home residences to more energy efficient measures, going from gas to electric, that will all come into play. And hopefully a lot of these folks won't have to have a car. If they have a car, they're having an EV or they're carpooling. There are a lot of different things that come into play there. So something that we've loosely been talking about in some of our other cities is the idea of looking at greenhouse gas emissions for a city as a whole versus per capita, right? So if you have more people, your emissions are going to go up, but it might actually go down per person, and that's still a positive, right? We're still looking at the individual greenhouse gas footprint, and we're also thinking about equity and affordability, and who can come and enjoy the wonderful community and amenities that Sammamish has. So all of those balancing out over time.
It's complicated.
Yeah, and at the meeting before, he mentioned the 2,000 allocation for affordable housing. And this is still at 2,000, this doesn't say the 4,000.
Well, those are different figures.
These are old numbers.
Well,
right?
they're different figures. So, and let me be sure that everyone understands. So there was a 2,100 growth target, that's over the next 20 years. That's different from what the town center, that 2,000 figure. They just happen to be similar numbers. But that is a growth cap in the town center, 2,000, but that doesn't have a time period attached to it.
But isn't the goal to update it to 4,000 or no?
Well, again, I'm talking about two different figures. The 2,100 is a 20-year essentially growth target that we need to make room and plan for 2,100 additional units, in which we've been told they all must be affordable within the city of Sammamish somewhere, right? The 2,000, again, it's just talking about the town center itself as a cap, not a target. Two different things.
So the town center wouldn't there's no plans to change the town center cap from 2,000 to 4,000?
No, that is exactly what we're doing.
That is
Okay,
what
yeah, I
they're
think that's
doing.
what Chris.
Right.
That's what, that is what they're doing.
Yeah,
And so is there, so I'm a teacher in the school district, and I know a lot of my friends cannot afford to live here. They're commuting from Renton or Everett or,
right.
and even in rentals, they are moving out because the rental prices are getting so high. So what can we do to get more teachers and service workers like that in our community? Like, you know, like what can we do to ensure a big percentage of affordable housing,
Well,
right? Like, how do we do that?
I mean, the market's not great right now. There's a lot of things working against it. Interest rates, high cost of, materials, high cost of labor. There's a lot of things that are in play. But overall, it's just macroeconomics. If you increase supply, the price should come down, or at least stabilize it. It won't keep increasing like it has. And when you restrict supply, that's how you get these prices that are exorbitant. Now, in addition to that, providing different options for housing types, I think is key to that. The city of Sammamish is 95% single family detached housing. And that is very low. I don't think I've worked in a city that was less than 20%. That had 20% multifamily. That would be 80% single. So that's, I think, the answer to that. Unlike affordable housing, meaning low and moderate income, I don't think there's a direct incentive that we would provide other than increasing the supply. We want to provide a direct incentive to like market rate housing, so that folks like teachers and firefighters and can live in the city. I think it's all about increasing supply and increasing diversity.
But isn't there a percent that right now there's a percent that needs to be that, right? I don't really know what it is, but the percent that needs to be affordable, maybe, that was
We
mentioned earlier.
require a minimum of 10%.
10%.
Yeah,
Okay.
to be affordable. And when I say affordable, that's based upon, that's up to 80% of the AMI, which is the average median income.
When we speak of affordability, are we talking about, because you talked about some rental properties, we're talking about rent or buy? I mean, is it just what somebody pays every month?
Yes,
Mortgage or
absolutely.
rent?
Yeah, it's a maximum amount of either rent or mortgage payment per month. And it could be for sale or for rent.
And what is that average income for considered affordable? Is it 80,000 a year or something, or what?
It is, I want to say for a household of 2 or 3 people, it's around $100,000 a year. That is, I think that's the AMI. You know that?
County,
Yeah.
it's 134,000 at 100% AMI.
Yeah.
For a family of 4. So 80% of 134.
Yeah. For a family of 4.
Yeah.
So right now we have that minimum of 10% that's required, and that's for the 80% level. And that's called inclusionary zoning. Essentially, it's a hard and fast rule. If you want to build housing, you have to provide that 10%. We're also talking about incentivizing additional density for lower than 80%, which around 50 to 80%, of the AMI. That's kind of the other kind of swath of incomes that we need to, be concerned about, essentially. 50% below, which is considered very low income, that's typically handled by kind of your housing authorities, your Habitat for Humanities, kind of your nonprofits. And there's probably, programs out there that they're going to be able to build some kind of, not necessarily in the town center, but elsewhere, build some type of housing for very low income. We're talking about addressing each of those kind of stratifications of incomes. Beyond that, though, and that's getting into more workforce housing issues. Those are typically not incentivized, and that's, I think the best way is, again, the diverse housing and then the number of units, increasing the supply.
And is the city council considering going above the 10%? Just because we're already so dominated by the single family, are they trying to boost it to get us more where other cities are at?
Well,
You know
it's
what I'm
not 10% multifamily, it's 10% affordable.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Are they trying to increase that to get even more than 10% affordable?
We haven't had that discussion, but again, we're looking at, in addition to that 10%, incentivizing beyond for a different, income level. But that's in addition to incentivizing green building, kinds of things. So there's probably going to be some choices, and there's a lot of things that we need to balance as we. So. I want to get back to the 4,000 units. So that is, I don't know exactly where we're going to end up, but in 2007, they studied 4,000 units and the impacts on all the services in the environment. We are basically updating that study. In 2008, they came up with a maximum of 2,000 units, but said, and I think they had every intention of increasing that. It was just kind of, let's see how it goes. That's why that trigger is in there that says, over time, once you get to a third, let's reevaluate and consider this again.
Is it a function of how high they can build the apartment structure?
Well, that's an interesting, because we were originally talking about building taller buildings in order to allow for more diverse and affordable housing. And it could also been in exchange for decreasing the footprint, like an LID lid, an LID, construction. So if you decrease your footprint, you could go higher, and in order to save open space. And that kind of, we went back to council. We had a lot of public comment, and we went back to council and asked them, and they said, just put that aside for now. So we're not studying that anymore.
Okay.
So the maximum height, I think, is around 75 feet.
Which would be roughly what, 6 or 7 or 8 floors?
Like 6 stories. And there were other kinds of questions. The reason why the 150 foot came up in the first place. Other questions that kind of surround that, as far as kind of feasibility and just the ability for a developer to build that. But it was also a very limited. We were looking at a very small area within the core, that would have been affected by that. So the amount of feedback that we received from people who were against it, I think we just said, so getting back to the 4,000, I don't know that we're going to include a development cap in the new plan. We're in a housing crisis, and I don't know why we would want to. It remains a cap in the sense that you can't go beyond what the services provide. So it's still there. It doesn't need to be kind of reasserted in the plan itself. So, if the EIS plans for 4,000 units, we can kind of build up to that density and hopefully not, this is what we study, and not have a negative impact on the services and capacities of schools and that sort of thing. But I don't think it really needs to be in the plan itself. What else did I want to say then? Oh, another thing to consider is kind of the rate of growth. So earlier I mentioned that there's around 1,000 units that have been planned or being built. or have been built. That took, about almost 20 years to complete. Well, most of them haven't even been completed, so it's gonna be more than 20 years. So we're talking about issues that probably wouldn't come to fruition until, 2040 or we. So
I
that's something
know,
to
but we're the
consider.
sustainability commission.
Right, I know, I know.
When people say, I'm like, but that's our role, is to
Yeah,
look beyond.
And,
Yeah, great question.
and
Really,
we're,
that was-
yeah, and we're planners, we wanna
Here for
be
it.
sure that it all works. But this idea that, if we adopt this plan tomorrow, the road is gonna be undrivable or something like that, that's just.
But it is a lot of people. I mean, that's an
Yeah.
increase of like up to 10, maybe 8,000. Is that what they're predicting with this increased plans? Like
Yeah, that's
8,000
probably about
people?
right.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
And people are
yeah.
nervous. I mean, watch on
Yeah.
community stuff and they're very scared about the transportation and the
Yeah.
roads, the traffic.
And that's our challenge. I mean, we're not gonna move something forward that doesn't work. And so we need to vet this, study it, and then put forth our best argument. So, and if it doesn't work, then if we need to cap it at 3,000 units, that's fine too. That's all that, the idea that, we would go beyond that and not, mitigate or plan for, additional improvements, that's just not the case. If it's only 3,000 units, it's what it needs to be. That's all the roads can handle and all the schools can handle, that's fine. And that's a well-planned.
And one last thing to add here before we move on to get through the rest of the presentation is also, it's not gonna happen all at once. It takes
Yeah.
time for the
Yeah,
developers to build and folks to move in and rent, and so as we see and get lessons learned as more and more is built, we can adjust accordingly.
Yeah.
And hopefully, as we continue the great work that the commission is doing, folks are already being set up for success with transportation, walkability, biking, carpooling, contacting their neighbors for help, all that type of stuff. So completely valid concerns, and sometimes you don't know till it already is started. And we don't really have a choice in the matter. We have to meet these growth management targets.
Well, that's true too,
So
yeah.
it all layers together, but these are really good questions. And important things that are being considered.
Yeah, one of the things about that I've been hearing recently about the original town center, and knowing that, the city at some point needed to provide other housing options. And this, I think, really comes into play now because you can build townhomes and, there are no exclusively single family districts. You can build, townhomes or duplexes or, all kinds of different housing now. And that's, mandated by the state, unless your covenants say differently, of course, that's a different thing you would need to work through. But there, to relieve the development pressures in the subdivisions and neighborhoods, the town center provides the opportunity to build different types of housing. So if it's not in the neighborhoods, if it's not in the existing subdivisions, it might as well be in the town center. And that's a rationale that I agree with, that it's going to relieve pressures elsewhere. So I think that's a benefit. So we've talked about a lot of these things on this slide. I moved ahead to the sustainability slide just because that's kind of where we were talking. So I talked about all of these pretty much, but I do want to say that this process, this kind of review has been happening for 2 years now. So there's been a lot of study. We do an existing condition study, which evaluates all the streets, it evaluates all the utilities, it evaluates schools, it evaluates all the services. We do a code audit. We do take all kinds of different steps. We have an open house, we have a workshop. We've met with the planning commission and the city council probably 10 different times at this point. We're doing meetings like this, we're out in the community. So there is just a lot of effort put into this overall process. The things that we've heard, kind of the desires, new services, retail, housing for different life stages. I think that's important. That's aging in place essentially. So if you own a big house, you had kids and, have lived here, all your life, the kids move out, you're an empty nester, but you want to move elsewhere. You don't need the big house anymore, but you want to continue living in Sammamish. The town center will provide an alternative housing.
There aren't a lot of options right now.
There are very few options to do that. To buy a condo, buy a townhome, rent an apartment, all of that sort of thing. That we need to improve transportation facilities overall, and that includes, providing additional, bus service, providing, the bike ped, but also improving, the streets to be sure that we're not going over capacity, and then increase walkability. The concerns, which I think you have mentioned many of these tonight, traffic and parking, school capacity, public service capacities, the impacts on the environment. We mentioned height and aesthetics. That one's kind of going away now because we're not looking at the 150 foot. And then the feasibility of the codes. Now, that's kind of the last thing. Overall, I've mentioned that there are many different things that we need to balance out. At the end of the day, we need to be sure that these things can be built by a developer. We don't want to plan for something that is just not going to work. And so that's another kind of thing that we're tracking, and that's another challenge we need to meet.
I'll ask 2 questions.
Yes, of course.
Sorry. I have lots of questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so one, I have heard many times the stormwater, but I'm sure you are, but can you tell us a little bit about how you look at to make sure even since we get a lot of our water from underground?
Yeah.
Do we have enough for 10,000 people or 8,000 additional more people the well water?
Oh,
Like to actually have drinking water? Or are
Yes,
they gonna
potable
pull
water,
it from
yeah.
Issaquah, or where are we gonna get this extra
Yeah.
water?
we work through the water district, Sammamish Plateau.
And they're gonna do a study to make sure we have enough?
They have
or
studied.
They already know,
Yes.
for sure,
Yes.
8,000 more.
100%.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And then my other question is, when you're saying they're redoing, it sounds like you're redoing all these studies, right, to update this change, to look at the change and trying to
Well,
make.
these are new studies.
Yes.
Yeah,
So how long would that take to do all these new studies?
so long.
Like this
It's
will
long.
not even be updated is this what you're talking about, 5 years?
Well, it's kind of one of the reasons why that other process took 5 years. No, there's an endpoint here, but we've been working on it for 2 years. So, looking at existing conditions, that took probably a year. The code audit probably took a year. And all of these things are used to inform this process. So this process starts essentially when we're ready to move forward. And so that's kind of what we're doing now. We're putting everything to paper. We're kind of taking all that information and putting it into one place. And that's kind of the process.
What I mean is, like, I see the community, right, because
Yeah.
I'm on all the community. They're expressing a lot of concern, and I'm just wondering, when does it, so it's right now the agreement is we are going to do this and we're gonna increase by this amount, and then we're gonna start doing, when will we conclude the study? Like, I guess I don't understand.
The studies are being
Yeah.
concluded now.
Okay, with
and-
this update,
Yeah.
so that will be within 6 months, or?
We hope to have a draft plan and draft environmental impact statement completed by June. And we hope to have this adopted by October.
That goes through public comment, and depending on how many comments you get, might determine how long it's gonna take to
Yeah,
finalize.
that's true
right?
too.
So-
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
All these have already been done. This is now taking all of that and actually updating the codes of
Right.
process.
It's a lot of work.
So maybe it's just like what I'm hearing, some of the communities just learning about this now or something, because
I
now
think
there's a
that's
lot of
part of
stuff
it.
going on about it.
I don't know.
Right.
There's I don't know. I've heard some information about, and this was mentioned at council meeting a few weeks ago about 40,000 new cars, or trips.
Mhm,
Which
mhm.
I don't know where that number comes from. It didn't come from us. So I really don't know what to say about that. That's just not the case. And once we're, completed with, we do a traffic study, we look at it in different ways. We can include different assumptions, like sensitivity analysis. And we want to plan, for the worst, worst case scenario, essentially. But that figure has never come. So I don't know why.
Mhm.
Really, what we're looking at with traffic is the level of service at intersections.
Mhm.
And so the idea is that if you get to a stoplight, you should be able to move forward in one interval. Meaning when the stoplight cycles through, get a green light, you might be behind a few cars. And I don't doubt that there's a lot of traffic on the road, but if you have to sit at a stop sign for multiple cycles, then it doesn't work. And that's when it needs to be improved or something else needs to happen. So we're not planning for that. And we have level of service standards in our comprehensive plan and our code, and we're not going to go beyond that. So we have consultants, engineers, professional people who are looking at this. So, yeah, I've heard, things in the community as well, which isn't, it's understandable. I totally get that. And it's not something that every place I've worked in the past has the same kind of, concern. But we're just not going to move something forward if it doesn't work.
Ironically, there are times during the day where I avoid roads because of school drop-offs and pickups right along 228 and other places, right? That's when our traffic really gets congested.
And that's, the AM and PM peaks, that's what we focus on.
Yeah.
And then, it also should be said that single family homes generate more traffic than an apartment. So it's actually, a much smaller factor. So, even though it is more people, more density, it doesn't mean that it's comparable to what we already have.
Especially if it's building.
Right.
Out of the market, rather than have to drive down the street to save.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
Yeah. So instead of, and that's part of it, you think about that. You drive to Redmond, you drive to Issaquah for different reasons to get all your goods and services. If you had that within the city of Sammamish, how would that change your driving? So that needs to be taken into account.
Yeah, I guess an exception could be some sort of a special event at the town center.
Right.
Where you get a lot of traffic, but it's not every day.
I think the farmers market is a good example of that.
Yeah.
Currently it's here, this is the most town centery place that's central and gathering. I think that would be down the line, town center would be an opportunity to move that event down there and then have a business and economic stimulation opportunity too.
So there's one last thing I want to run by you. I took them out of order, but I think I've addressed all these slides. This is a big change that we are proposing, and this is the zoning and land use map. On the left is our current map, and on the right is what we're proposing. The difference between the two, these are the purple areas those are the A zones. Those are kind of the core areas. And when this plan was first developed, they created kind of 4 or 5 different nodes for the core area. And essentially what I mean by core area, that's where your taller buildings can be built and that sort of thing. So out beyond the core area, it kind of steps down, to the next district, and then steps down again to the last district, which adjoins the neighborhoods. So essentially it's a wedding cake approach where you have kind of the taller in the middle, and you step down. And so if you get to the existing neighborhood, you're transitioning into smaller buildings overall. What we're proposing is to combine those core areas essentially into one core area. And then you have, a step down in the green and then a step down again in the light blue. The light blue would essentially be townhomes. The green would probably be, apartments and flats and condos. And then the dark blue would be, mixed use buildings and that sort of thing. So that's we see that as more of a rational approach. It's also more efficient for utilities and kind of building out infrastructure and that sort of thing.
The yellow, where we are, YMCA.
Yeah, the yellow is the civic, in the park, So that is a big change. I'm not sure not entirely sure why they did the nodes. It's really inefficient. It costs more. It's probably harder on the services overall.
How do you change with like that A2, right? No, that already exists, right? Isn't that the SAM
Yeah,
apartments?
yeah.
So how do you
Yeah,
Does it make, it also matches the green requirements over here?
yeah, there's, well, we're gonna look at that. We need to be sure that we don't negatively affect existing developments in building owners or landowners. So we do need to evaluate that, but we don't think it's gonna be that big of a change. And then there's also vesting rights. And so if there's a landowner that's been approved, I mentioned the entitlement process. If there's a landowner who has a project already approved, regardless of what we do with the plan or the code, they can still build that project. So, it kind of works out in the end. That's a big topic, land use and zoning. So we need to take that step, but that's one of the bigger changes, I think, other than kind of the density and the other updates that we're making. Yeah, I think.
We probably need to move on to
That's slide.
the rest of our, yeah.
Okay, we'll get to this.
This is a very inquisitive group.
I'm fine
That out.
saying that.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to answer your questions
No.
too. And
It's good.
if you have any questions or concerns, please, reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to follow up. So just let me tell you real quick where we are in the process. Kind of mentioned, I should have brought this up before. So yeah, we completed several, all of these steps thus far. We're drafting the plan now in the SEIS, which is a supplemental environmental impact statement. When we adopt it, it'll be a final environmental impact. So keep in mind, if it has EIS, it means environmental. But overall, the steps on the left are nearing completion. On the right is what we still need to do is publish the draft plan, publish SEIS, the draft code. We have additional community engagement. We have this long comment period for the environmental impact. And then it goes to review for planning commission and city council. And like I said, that should be happening within the next 6 months.
And you got, say, assuming it's approved by somewhere October time,
Yeah.
what does it look like after that?
Then it is implemented. So we start implementing. It's adopted and it becomes an official city plan and a city code, and we start implementing.
Change developers too.
Yeah.
So another thing I keep hearing about is it's a concern over an evacuation plan.
Yeah.
I don't see that up here. Is that something you guys are looking at developing some community?
Well, it's more of a citywide concern. And we have been talking to the fire district.
So then,
We have been talking to the fire district.
oh, like to develop that, like a plan or?
Yeah, and we want to be sure that, what we're doing here doesn't, cause issues. Or additional issues, but, we received we asked for comment in that particular from the fire district. They provided, some review and pointed us to some figure or some resources. That's a citywide effort, but kind of outside of this planning process.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's my presentation. Thank you for all the questions and insights. I wrote down a few things. If you have additional questions, you can go to our website. On that website, you'll see all the steps that we've taken. There's a lot of background information. You can find all the upcoming meetings. You can also, there is a link to a map that shows all the current development, everything that's been built. And if you click on those locations, you'll see all of kind of the staff reports and the plans. And there's just a lot of information if you're interested. And of course, you can email me and, ask me anything, I will try to answer.
Well, thank you for coming tonight. This was really
Yeah,
informative.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
I do appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.
Are there any last questions or? Am I-
Any other questions,
am I off
feel
the
free
hook?
to email and then we'll get them answered and we'll put them in the Q&A for the next meeting. If there's anything that comes up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I actually am really excited.
Yeah.
I think it's good.
I
I think it's exciting. I know people are upset, but I think it's cool.
it's gonna take long. The market needs to get a lot better.
Oh, that assisted living place look everything.
Exactly.
Thank you. Enjoy that. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Did we have our?
I made you put it on.
Yeah, I
You
did.
want it
put
or no?
up
You
in
don't have
the meeting.
Yeah,
I wanted
okay, yeah.
to be able to see
Bring
everyone's
mine.
faces, because I
Okay.
was reviewing some of our old videos, and it's nice to be able to see who's talking.
Yeah.
The agenda is available online for the
Okay.
public to view, so. That was more just so we didn't always have the presentations taking up the screen, so, yeah. Moving on.
So I think moving on, our next agenda item is the Energy Smart Eastside Heat Pump Program. So hopefully everyone had an opportunity to read through that. It was about an 11 or 12 page report. We're happy to discuss questions. We've got our resident heat pump subject matter expert here. I'll just kind of open it up. Does anyone want to discuss any aspect of that, of the heat pump program?
Who were we asking questions?
Me, I can answer anything, and then I have, if there's not any specific questions, really the reason I attached this to the agenda was to have it as a resource for you all. Obviously, the report is already finalized. This was something that we worked on as an internal steering committee team, and with our program manager based out of Bellevue. So this is really just for all of you to feel informed on the progress of Energy Smart Eastside, which again is our heat pump program, providing some discounts and information to all residents, and then some different tiers of incentives available depending on your income level.
And it's just an update on the implementation, right? How many have been installed and what
Totally.
cities and, yeah.
Yeah, just if you're curious to learn more and actually get some figures, the really the main things I wanted to focus on, and then I'll let you all ask any questions, is page 28 and 29. Oh, sorry, of the agenda packet. That is page 12 of the report, and I'll go ahead and share my screen so anyone watching after the fact knows what I'm talking about. Great, so just kind of how this ties into your work as commissioners and all of the things that we've been talking about at our previous meetings. Really, it's that number one. Continuing to increase awareness of and involvement in these programs, Energy Smart Eastside, Solarize, by using our community-based trusted messengers. And that looks different for every community. Obviously, this program report is for all 6 East Side cities. So just kind of, a friendly and exciting reminder that you all are really one of these 3-pronged approach. Like, we as cities, we work with the utilities, we work with our state representatives and state and regional groups. And then we also work with our contractors from the other side of things. And then the 3rd prong of that is the community conversations and talking to your neighbors and, oh, so-and-so got a heat pump. Maybe that's something I should try. What even is a heat pump anyway? And so just a reminder and an encouragement that you all are so crucial to this work, and you're also not alone. This is happening in all of the 6 cities. We also have a new volunteer program through Energy Smart Eastside that if any of you are interested in and spending more time volunteering for heat pumps, it's called the Energy Smart Eastside Volunteer Advisors. And so this is an opportunity to get some training with our Energy Smart Eastside program staff. And then you're actually available for your community members to schedule one-on-one conversations with, to talk about heat pumps, to connect them to contractors, to talk about your personal experience or why it might be important. So yeah, this absolutely ties into all of the work that you all have been doing, which is really great. And then the last thing there, I think I was showing, okay, drive awareness of benefits of heat pumps through marketing and use of trusted messengers. That is you all and myself as city staff. And then just a brief kind of overview of our program expansion strategy. We're continuing to scale up. We're continuing to pursue grant funding, trying to kind of reach some of those different residents that may not have been reached through some of our initial marketing campaigns. And then the city of Issaquah is also running a pilot program with a consultant. They're using some of their climate planning dollars, which is grant money from the state through the Climate Commitment Act. And basically doing a study on, is there an opportunity to expand Energy Smart Eastside outside of heat pumps? We do have this Solarize pilot that's going on now through July 4th, but where is the best place if we were to expand, if we do get additional grant money or have more city dollars? Should we focus on weatherization and making sure folks' homes are going to be able to keep in a lot of the heat or cooling from this energy efficient technology. That ties in really well with heat pumps. Or do we want to expand and not just have it be HVAC systems, but also provide incentives for heat pump water heaters or heat pump dryers? And so they're doing a study right now that we'll be able to kind of look back at once they've completed, getting community input, doing some market research, some of the numbers crunching, and then also talking with our leadership at the cities of what makes sense, what's impactful, what's affordable, where are the gaps in some of the state or regional programs that already exist. So we're really excited about that, and I'll be sharing the findings of that study with the commission when the time comes. So those were just the two kind of things that wanted you all to be aware of, because we're partners in this.
I had a couple questions about the report.
Totally.
It talks about grant money a lot in here and all that kind of stuff. How secure is that grant money? Like, where's it coming from, given the general political environment? What's
Well,
going
it's
on in
like
Washington, DC?
some of it already ended or is ending soon, right? The grant says in there.
Yeah, so a lot of that money has already been allocated and contracts have been signed. In fact, all of it has already been allocated and contracts have been signed. So all of the grants that we've already received are secured and will be spent. Future grants, we just heard great news that Puget Sound Energy received some funding, or had the ability to receive some funding that we can then apply for heat pumps. A lot of our funding is coming from that Climate Commitment Act funding, so it's not federal, it's state funding. I actually don't think anyone is using federal, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure we're the only city actually using federal money. We have an energy efficiency and conservation block grant from the Department of Energy that funds 5 of our low income heat pump installs. It's about $120,000 that we received. And so we're just moving on as if we are good to go, because we did receive that grant and we have met all the requirements. So to answer your question, it's not a concern right now. Luckily, there's not a lot of federal money that's currently being put towards this program.
Spend it before you lose it.
Exactly, and we're looking at some contract amendments to extend some of these grants have a June 30th deadline for spending, or at least getting things contracted, and we're gonna be finding some requests for extensions on that, because we have clearly the demand and the program set up, and we just need a little bit more time to make sure we can get those folks set up with our current capacity.
And my other question was, somewhere in these slides, there's a stated goal of 99% of all installs happening in the city or on the side being heat pumps. That's a wonderful idea. Is that feasible? That feels like that's not feasible unless there's no other option, but. What's the realistic goal with their market?
So that's the goal by 2050.
Fine.
So, yeah. So part of it is that great number that we saw that I should have on the top of my head. I apologize, it's been a long day. In Sammamish, we have, I believe it's 66% of our heat pumps already being installed, 66% of our HVAC systems that are being installed are heat pumps.
That's new, right?
Yes, and so this 99% number is for all, and part of that takes into account that furnaces, HVAC systems have about a 20-year life cycle. And so if we're continue to increase the new construction, and then by the time all of the old construction phases out, and even the new construction that we maybe didn't get to get heat pumps, by the time 2050 rolls around, it's a more achievable number than it maybe seems right now, because of some of those building codes, and then the program ramping up and incentives continuing, and technology continuing to get cheaper and more affordable. Obviously, what's happening at the federal level can very well impact that, and this kind of target was set before a lot of those balls started rolling.
Isn't that target predicated on the ban on natural gas, kind of set by the previous state government administration? And that was a 2030 requirement, right? So
Is that the one that got overruled or whatever?
I don't know where it currently is, but
It's been, it went to court and it got tossed.
2066.
Or allow gas,
Oh,
but passed and then it got.
Okay.
right.
Yeah, that was the
Back
one
to
where
no.
cities
Yes.
weren't allowed
But
to
apparently the initiative asked for too much.
de-incentivize, we basically weren't allowed to say anything, oh, you need to switch from natural gas to electric, and it didn't hold up in court. So
Okay.
that initiative is no longer
Okay, but that 99% was tied to that assumption, or is that still a goal?
That goal was before 2066
Okay.
came into play, and it
Yeah.
also was before some of the potential federal and state rollbacks.
Yeah.
Of the current administration.
Yeah.
So it's something we absolutely will probably reevaluate, but that was when we were planning and kind of coming up with these goals, that was the current state of things.
It's a stretch goal.
Well, yeah, and it's,
Yeah.
yeah, Dave used to harp on this a lot, right?
Totally.
Yeah, stretch goals, but we should also have reason, like,
Yeah.
what the actual, not actual, but goal and a stretch.
Reasonable and achievable goal.
Yeah,
And that's why we've also got some of those near term targets of 65% overall, and each city kind of has their own numbers that they're working. So, great
Right.
questions, love you can,
You
continuing
count-
Dave's.
You count the number of households in the city. Statistics I've read, about 75% of us, not me, but use natural gas to heat their houses. You need about 800 conversions a year to make the 2050 goal. So if heat pumps die, or I'm sorry, your gas furnace dies at a rate of, if you get 20 years, that's a 5% per year conversion rate.
Yeah, and not all of those conversions are gonna be through Energy Smart Design specifically, right? Like some of this is just the market and the technology continue, like
Well-
EV adoption in the city, for example, is great.
I got a feeling, given the income incentives in here now, most of the city of Sammamish is only gonna qualify for the $500 rebate.
Yeah.
Also
Or
something
my
that we're
person.
looking at through that study.
Pardon?
That's also something we're looking at through the study with clause, like are our incentives at an appropriate level? How could we maybe shift
Yeah.
them? And that's for heat pumps and for other technology as well. So,
Well, let's see, I think I don't know whether it's the average or the median or whatever, but it's over, income in this city is over 200,000.
Mhm.
So Paul's number is right about what's.
Paul's was King County.
Huh?
Paul's number was for King County.
Okay,
And that's the
okay.
number we get graded on for all these metrics.
and we need to remember also that this program, while we focus on Sammamish, it is looked at through the lens of the east side as a whole.
Yeah.
And we wanna make sure it's equitable for the east side as a whole, not just. So, yeah, feel free if you haven't had a chance to finish reading through this, or you give it another read through now that we've kind of talked about it and heard from Matt, and you actually have the report in front of you with the agenda. Any follow-up questions, just email them my way, and then I'll put them in that Q&A matrix so that everyone can review them at the next meeting. We can absolutely revisit this report as needed or wanted by folks, but we really just wanted you to make sure that you had it and can answer any questions that might come up.
So does Energy Smart Eastside have an answer to this question? What do I do when the power goes out?
It's a good question.
You find a hotel near the airport.
Same thing you did when the power goes out when you have a gas one and your thermostat doesn't work and it doesn't turn on.
Yeah, that, unless you own a Generac,
Right.
like some people I know.
I own a generator.
It's a hard question, and I think it's also an important question, especially having,
But
recently
the
had
point
the,
should be made that your gas furnace isn't gonna work either.
You're right, because your thermostat's.
and I think that's part of the plug for solar and battery storage and all, right? Like, there's a lot of things that tie in there, but that is a very common question that we get, especially during the winter time. And also remembering, like, it sucks when the power goes out, but it's also a very small percentage of the days of the year.
I would say in the 38 years I've lived here, I'd say my power's been out. Maybe 3 weeks. Total.
Yeah,
of all
exactly.
that.
So it's a great question.
I can suck it up.
Yeah, and to have lower energy bills and a lower impact on the environment for a
Yeah.
lot of people, that's worth it. So, yeah. Any other questions on this?
Yeah, I was just looking here on page 4, it says 13% of east-side heat pumps installed in 2024 used in the ESE incentive. It seems a little bit low. I'm just wondering, does that have to do with? What does that have to do with, is that?
A lot of that
An
has to do
income,
with
uh,
the
question?
income. Yeah, so
Okay.
we have a fair amount of folks who will come to us for resources or leads or information or counseling or coaching on heat pumps. But not all of those folks will qualify or actually be awarded dollars from the program, and so that's what we're tracking here.
Okay,
And we're
because,
working on driving that number up as well with the study that we're doing with some of the targeted marketing outreach. Part of this is helping folks actually install a heat pump, and part of this is just education on what a heat pump is for when the time comes.
yeah, I mean, obviously it's not all about the incentive, it's just what, do they even know what a heat pump is and, yeah,
So
and installing it, yeah.
Sure.
And I looked too about heat pumps installed in affordable housing units. In Sammamish is not in the table, but I guess that's the lack of affordable housing goes into that.
that's part of it, and part of it also was there was some targeted grant funding for affordable housing that happened before Sammamish was part of the Energy Smart Eastside program. We joined Q4 of 2024. So our numbers are gonna be a little bit skewed on the lower side anyways. But we were not part of that grant cycle, and so we didn't have funds that could go towards those installs, so we weren't included. And I don't believe Mercer Island is included either in that chart. Affordable
No,
housing,
no.
yeah, so part of that is the affordability of the city and the actual number of units, and part of that is we weren't even eligible really to be a competitive grant applicant, so the other cities really took that on.
Okay, and then they show also the funnel for the moderate income heat pump rebate.
Which page was that?
It's on page 10.
Great.
And why are we losing people in the funnel? Because the conversion rate looks like it's about, maybe about 21%, something like that.
Yeah, so that
How
funnel.
do we lose people in the funnel?
Totally, so this is a great visual representation of what actually happens with Energy Smart Eastside. So when folks visit our website, go to a webinar, go to an in-person workshop, see a transit ad and scan a QR code, there's the opportunity to apply for a rebate. So rebate applications is the number of folks that we actually got to apply. The next one down is how many folks actually qualified based on their income level and demographics to get a rebate code. And so that's for the $6,000 rebate for the moderate income. This is just moderate income,
Right.
not the lowest income.
Huh.
And then from that, it's how many folks actually decided to go through the contracting process, get the heat pump fully installed, and then utilize the rebate. And so there's a number of reasons folks might not actually use the rebate, whether they don't have the funds to pay the rest of it at that time. There's some issue with their home, it's just not the right time financially. Any number of personal reasons that folks might not choose to actually use the code. And one of the things we're looking at next year is how to have that funnel be a little bit more like a box from the rebate codes issued to the rebate codes redeemed, whether that's following up with folks. Rebate codes are only valid for 90 days once you receive it. So following up with folks, getting them a new code if they're qualified, but maybe just weren't ready within that 3-month period. Yeah, and having a little bit better retention, but that's explaining essentially why those numbers go down.
And that's all. It's not just.
Yeah. That's the whole east side.
When I looked into this, last fall, I read that they referred you to an RCW to determine what your AMI was.
Yeah.
As opposed to a King County. And I think it seems to me that explanation probably should be, rather than requiring somebody to go dig through Washington state codes to find that number.
Yeah.
And then read through the mumbo jumbo legal jargon, and then go back to the last tax return and compare numbers. A simple English might help a lot.
I'll definitely bring that feedback
Yeah.
back to our website team. We're currently working with a marketing kind of a design firm to make our website a little bit more user friendly, increase the amount of folks that are actually make it simpler for them to get to that rebate application, and then have the process be a little bit more clearly laid out. So I'm not sure when you last checked the website, there have been some improvements.
No, I've got my heat pump, and so I didn't need.
Totally, yeah, there's definitely been some improvements since even, Sammamish joined in late 24. But we do still have a little bit of ways to go with that.
Because there are a lot of Washington, the RCW eliminates a lot of things that you would normally use as deductions on your income taxes as something that you can use toward your calculation of what your AMI actually is for the purposes of getting the rebates.
Yeah, it's lower than you might think. I
Yeah.
was looking through
Yeah.
that today and I was like, oh, I'm actually qualified for more than I thought. So. It's your basically adjusted gross income. Actual salary.
Yeah, you don't get to turn the 1040 over.
Okay,
Should we move on to Earth Day?
yeah, any other questions,
Yeah.
please feel free to email me, I'd love to address them, we can revisit this as needed. Okay. We're gonna go like super fast through this, but a lot of this is just kind of level setting for Earth Day, talking about who might be comfortable doing what roles, getting feedback on a couple items.
Maybe show of hands, who's gonna be at Earth Day? Oh, most of us, okay, great.
Okay, I'm gonna just put this here. Sorry for folks online. Sorry for those of you at the end of the table who might not be able to read this far. But this is our sustainability wheel. So when we are at Earth Day, and I can pass this around, we are booths 2 and 3. So we are right at the front of the event. We're
Basically the same spot last year.
exact same spot as last year. So we're gonna have 2 booths. We're gonna have one one with the Sustainability Commission, and it's gonna be the Sustainable Sammamish booth, similar to what we've had at farmers markets in the past. That will have this lovely wheel. There's a bunch of questions on this wheel. Many children will come up to you wanting to spin the wheel, so there will probably be a line. So we are gonna need someone to be kind of supervising a child spinning the wheel. Oftentimes their parent will be with them, and so the parent will read the question, but typically I like to have this on an angle so that you can read the question. There's a couple on here. I'll just read through them really quick. Please flag if you're like, that's not a question that I think is great, or wait, maybe we should add this question. What is one thing you can do to use less electricity? Turn off the lights, unplug electronics when you're not using them. If they're a little bit older or a parent, you can say, installing a heat pump, right? So they'll give you an answer and you can be like, yeah, that's so great. Typically what I'll say is, wow, that's so great. That's a really great example. And have you thought about this? Or another great idea might be this. And so, yeah, conversation starters. These are basically very brief conversation starters. What are 2 ways to get around Sammamish without a car? Walking, biking, carpooling, taking the bus, roller skating. You're probably gonna get some weird answers, but one that's I'd be interested in your feedback on: why is sustainability important for the environment? Some of these are big words, some of these are very small children. So if you need to like simplify it a little bit for them, like, why is nature important for you or something like that? You can kind of use your best judgment. This is a good one, kind of we added this year. What is the maximum age that youth can ride the bus or other public transportation for free? The answer is 18 or under. So 19 is the maximum age. So however you want to say that, even up until you turn 19, you can still ride for free. It's not like, oh, 18 is the cutoff. It's actually 19 that's the cutoff. So that's great, especially for, high schoolers, middle schoolers who come by. Some folks don't know that. They think you have to be like a kid, like 16 or under. It's 19 or under. What is one thing you can do to use we already did that. What is one thing you can do to use electricity? How often do you ride the bus to school, work, or activities? So that's getting them starting to think about, oh, do I ride the school bus? Do I ride the public bus? How would you get around if you or your family did not have a car? You'll notice a lot of these have the transportation and energy themes because that's what our booth is focused on this year. How often do you carpool with friends or family? That's a repeat. What does the word sustainability mean to you? This is a great one. A lot of kids are going to say, what is sustainability? And then you could say, sustainability is using resources today so that you can have them tomorrow, or how whatever your little one-liner is that you feel fits your personal vibes or, you know, the child that you're talking to. How would you get around if you didn't have a car? Maximum age. Why is sustainability important for people? And yeah, so there's some repeats in here. Last year we had every single question was basically different, but we wanted to kind of keep the conversation a little bit more targeted. And yeah, and then once they answer the question, we have little prizes. So I'm thinking it might be nice to have one person kind of helping facilitate and then someone else giving the child the prize or whatever they want because kids can be indecisive. And we have a couple different options. So initial thoughts on the wheel while I grab the prizes.
Can you make the print a little bigger?
I can do that. Yes, I'd be happy to.
Last year was so windy, the prizes were blowing off the table. They had to put paperweights on them.
Heavy prizes?
Yeah.
Is it only the one that hits it, like where the red thing is, where it's where you read it, right?
Yeah.
So why not make them read straight down? So everyone can read it, because I can't read it's written sideways.
Oh, I see what you're
Like,
saying.
you can write it like straight down, so everyone's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, where did it sustainability, you know what I'm saying?
So you're saying.
Yeah.
have
Yeah,
print-
write like a
Couple
pizza
rows
slice.
of
Yeah,
You want,
pizza,
you
like-
want the print perpendicular to this.
Yeah,
one.
if you're only reading right where the red one, and
Yeah.
you can put them all that way.
it's good advice. I switched the direction this year because last year we had people going like this. So
Yeah,
it's like
'cause
now
right
you
now
can
I'm
read
like,
it like
I'm still,
this.
I can't even read it at all from here. I don't think they could read that. But
Yeah,
if you put it, going down like 3 lines.
this is great. This is why I need to sometimes take a step back and be like, what actually makes sense? Okay, heard,
Because
love it.
then kids back here could read it too. But right now I can't, I'm like this close and I don't even put it, that's too like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
You can, turn your head,
Yeah.
bunch, yeah,
true.
yeah.
Yeah, and this is right at the edge of the booth, so anyone coming up, even if, they're a little bit, they'll be like right here.
Oh, okay, right in
Yeah.
front of it.
But I do agree, it could be at least a font
Try it,
size.
see if
Yeah,
it works. I
I'll
mean,
mess
it
around
may
with
not
it.
work, but.
totally.
Doing the red thing to the side.
I can't, this is how it is. That's what I got. Okay, so in addition to the wheel, well, to supplement the wheel, we have some little temporary tattoos for kiddos. They're a little glittery. They're all kind of environmental themed. There's like, these are left over from some event like 2 or 3 years ago. So I'm just trying to go through them. This is not a future giveaway that I think we should repeat. 1, because not everyone likes temporary tattoos. 2, because they're all wrapped in little individual plastic that is super not sustainable. And 3, because they're not like super sustainability themed, but it is sustainable using the things that you have rather than just throwing them out. So that's why we've got them this year. So every kid can just grab a random one. I have like a big metal bowl filled with these. When they run out, they run out, but I'm thinking that'd be a good giveaway. Up here I have a duck, a butterfly, and a flower. We have these keychains as well. These are King County Metro branded. They've got a couple different transportation options on here: bus, tram, walk, light rail, ferry, bike, carpool. So I was thinking that might go well with the transportation theme. But if you guys feel like this might not be the best fit for Earth Day, we can also save this for farmers markets. I don't have a ton of them. This is also old stock of materials that I found. We probably have 50-ish of these. So let me know what you think. They're children, so I don't know how much they would be using this.
I mean, if my young kids would love it, just to wear it as a necklace.
Yeah.
And hit each other.
So that's another option. Think on it for a sec. I also have these Move Redmond stickers that we have kind of to celebrate the new light rail opening. They're cute. They're nice. I don't have a ton of these either, but we'll just be giving out stuff. And when
They
we
just
run
all
out, we'll
go in
give
the
something
bowl?
else. It totally could. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I can pass that around. If you guys want any of these, I have some extras. And then the main big giveaway that we did last year, and we have a bunch of extras for this year, is wildflower seeds. So this one is like huge, great, good for pollinators. We package these ourselves, so I have a list. If anyone asks, like, what is in here, I can pull that out and you guys can reference that. But they're all native pollinator wildflowers local to the area.
Cool.
And this is a compostable packaging. And then the very last thing for Arbor Day, a little Arbor Day celebration, we have this coloring sheet for kiddos. It's 10 things trees do for us, and then it's the coloring portion. A little bit of education, a little bit of fun. We're not going to be handing this out at our booth, but I did want to just bring it and pass it around so you all can see. This is what the Sammamish stewards will have at their booth. They have a table specifically dedicated to kids' arts and crafts. So they'll have this as well as a tree scavenger hunt and some other tree native species related materials, as well as actual plants that they will be handing out.
You expect that most of the visitors to our booth will be kids?
We do see a lot of children at Earth Day. We do see a good amount of middle schoolers and high schoolers as well, or, you know, young couples, older folks who just want to come out, hang out. It's a good variety, but anyone who's there last year will tell you it's pretty heavily dominated by the youth and Sammamish, which is great. There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of kids who really care and know, and there's also kids that just have no idea what's going on.
And some of them drag their parents.
Yeah, actually a lot of them. Yeah. So the reason we're thinking about having kind of one person to talk about the wheel, one person to hand out, is because you can kind of continue that conversation with the parent while the kid is picking out their prize or whatever. And then you can continue and then move on to the next.
And you're gonna have their stack of those sustainability magazines.
Yeah, we'll have a big stack of that. We'll also have a QR code so folks can just scan to learn more. And then the last thing that we have is orca cards. So I have not received them yet, but I did put in an order of 200 orca cards, youth orca cards specifically. So we do need one person to be, it's not like the most fun job in the world, but it's a really impactful job. One person to be fully dedicated to handing out these youth orca cards to folks and helping them register. So bringing your iPad, connecting to either my little Wi-Fi hotspot or the Wi-Fi in the lodge, and then handing those out to folks. It's a really, really easy one-page registration. Open up an incognito browser. You need their name, an email, so probably a parent email, or if they're, you know, old enough to have their own email, then that's great. Kids 6 and older is kind of the ideal there.
6 to 19.
6 to 19. Yeah, because if you're under that, you should not be riding public transportation by yourself. Even 6 is pretty young.
Yeah.
It doesn't really, whatever age, if you feel like, oh, this kid might use the orca card, this is a little bit more towards like the teen.
Well, they might not be by themselves. Maybe
Yeah,
their parents.
the parent would, but you know, use your best judgment. Like if they're a really, really young kid, giving them an orca card and seeing if they want to register is probably not going to be as fruitful. But the registration form just requires name, email, birth date, and then the physical orca card that you hand them will have an orca card number on there, and that's how they get set up. And then they can tap that anytime, buses, light rail, etc.
It's unlimited rides.
Mhm.
Okay.
They're free for anyone.
Okay.
Free for anyone under 19.
And will there be a sign at the booth like market cards for free if you're under 19? or
Yeah.
something?
Orca card registration. So it's going to be a little chaotic. There's a lot going on at once, which is why I wanted to kind of set the stage now, see who might be interested in different roles. If there's anything like I'm in this, so if there's anything I'm really not thinking about or that you want me to set up and take care of prior to the day of, now would be the time. Or if you think about it over the next week until about Thursday will be the last time I'll be getting materials. So yeah, I don't think I'm forgetting anything.
Does anybody want to do the orca card part of it?
I'm happy to do whatever you can, whatever.
Well, the only reason I ask is, it sounded like we need to bring our tablets to the event, right?
You can also think on it. I can send an email out next week. It's also something I'm happy to do. If you all feel like you've got the rest of it under control, I'm totally happy to do that. And I'd probably just bring my laptop and help folks do that way. So.
Sounds like we need jobs to do. Is there a bike place for me to ride my bike and park it there? Like, are there bike racks somewhere?
Yes.
Do you know where they are?
Yeah.
They're by
They're by the launch.
the lodge.
Yeah.
So if you look
Okay.
at this, I think they're
Right over there. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I think Rose suggested we get there, if you're gonna meet, we're happy to volunteer for as long as you can, but if you're gonna show up at the early part, get there about 10:30, so we can kind of set up
Okay.
and square away. It's from 11 to 2, right?
Yeah, and folks typically start rolling up a little bit before 11. So we try to have everything set up. I'll be there at 10. The booths will be pretty much set up by the time you arrive, but just to familiarize yourself with the space, talk to some folks casually, I would recommend showing up no later than 10:30. And then if we want to decide, like, do we all want to wear blue, green? Does it not matter? I know some folks had said they already have Earth Day like shirts, which would be fun. I'm planning to wear my blue City of Sammamish shirt, so
Do you have extras?
I don't. They're from the 25th Jubilee.
Oh,
We
okay.
had a bunch made and I just
Okay.
happened to snag one. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't even like I just snagged it from an event.
Oh,
So
no worries. I guess we could bring our badges. or
badges for
convention
sure.
badges, yeah.
I won't probably be able to get you a new one ordered by then.
That's fine, yeah.
I have an Earth Day shirt, but I don't remember if it's blue. It's either blue
It
or
doesn't have
black.
to be. I'm just, if y'all want to like match and take a photo or anything, we can. There's no pressure. Last year we weren't and it was still fine. So I want you all to feel like this is your event that you're excited about and like,
Yeah,
I'm excited.
and then, maybe you're gonna get to this, but you prepared some one pager or some descriptions on the climate action plan for us,
yes,
right?
I did. Did y'all have a chance to read through that? It's a new rendition of the one page FAQ document I had previously created with Steve's edits and a couple of new sections on transportation and solar. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
So read through that. That's basically meant to be your cheat sheet. You can have that physically there if you want. I'll probably have a copy or two printed as well, just for you all to reference. There's also a climate action plan one pager in case you get specific questions on the climate action plan. If you want to just pass that over to folks to see. So I'm gonna have some copies of this. And if you think of anything that is missing from the FAQ document, anything you would change, any questions you're nervous about and want some resources, let me know. Up until Thursday of next week, I have some capacity to work on that and continue making edits to the FAQ document. But I didn't want to go too crazy. I wanted to really just be those high level talking points.
I mean, honestly, based on last year's experience, like there's nobody going like super deep into the climate action plan and talking to you for about a half hour, it's really kind of an elevator pitch.
So this is gonna be there, this isn't in the presentation.
No, that's something I had found when I was going through all of our materials from last year, that if it's helpful for you all, I can print some out.
I think it is helpful.
Yeah.
Great.
And it's available online as well. Just truncates the climate action plan.
Oh, this is out of the plan.
Yep, it's directly pulled from the plan, just
Summary.
consolidated.
Summary.
Are we missing anything? We talked about the prizes, the plan. I think that's it.
Yeah.
When to be there, what time?
Oh, I have a question actually about the location. I just wanted to know, I heard a while back that the storm damaged the roof of the pavilion part of it.
It did. Yeah.
Is that fixed by now?
I actually don't know if the pavilion is fixed. I think that it is, but if not, it will be roped off and like they're aware that it was a safety hazard at one point.
Okay.
So last year there wasn't a ton going on in the pavilion. Most of the activities actually happen inside of the lodge itself and then out in the green. We're keeping our fingers crossed for good weather. It's been great the last 2 years, so hopefully we get a repeat and don't get rained on, but we have tents just in case we do, so. Any questions that you have, any concerns, schedule changes, anything, I'm here to be a resource for you all. We're really grateful for those of you who can come and really excited. It's such a fun event. It's very invigorating, great to see all the youth, great to also wander to the other tables and ask some of these community groups, the water district, ask them some of the hard questions, right? And just generally get out there and talk to your community.
Was one of these things we're gonna do, there was a booth that was, we're gonna major on heat pumps. Is that at Earth Day or is that?
Yes, yep,
Okay.
So I got a little ahead of myself with that map there, so booth 3 is the commission booth where we'll have the wheel and the transportation. Focus, but we don't need to get too into the details because we do have a sound transit booth that will be there to talk about the new light rail and all of that, so if you get specific questions, you can just shoot them over to the sound transit booth. If you get specific questions about native species, trees, etc., shoot them over to the Sammamish Stewards booth. We'll also have a booth there from King County Metro and Hope Link talking about community plan. So you don't need to get too into the details, you can kind of direct folks. Booth 2 on that map, so right next to us, is specifically focused on Energy Smart East Side heat pumps and
Okay.
solarized.
Okay.
So that'll be split. Steve, that's somewhere you had talked about maybe floating to as an
Yeah.
additional volunteer. We do have a gentleman from Solarize who is their basically program manager, and then a volunteer from the Energy Smart East Side Energy Advisors. So there will be some staff there, depending on how the booth traffic is, we can have you kind of float.
Okay.
And that is, again, questions about heat pumps, go talk to our neighbors. Questions about solar, go talk to our neighbors. So we're helping connect folks with those resources and start those conversations.
Yeah, I was kind of disappointed you canceled the,
I was
Heat
too.
pump.
I was against
I was there.
canceling
It's not
that, I know.
canceled,
It
it's
got
rescheduled.
rescheduled.
Yeah,
I'm
rescheduled.
glad, cause now I can make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't make it though.
well, okay, that's a good reason.
Probably a good idea to bring a water bottle. There will be a food truck there. There was a huge line last year, so, we can bring some lunch and a water bottle
And I did get an answer, the food trucks use all compostable wares.
Yeah.
so, thank you.
I make sure that there's not, but our event organizers are really good about that. Our Parks and Recreation team is very much in the sustainability realm, so. Yeah, any other questions, shoot them my way, I'll share them with the group prior to Earth Day, I'll send out a reminder probably late-ish next week with a reiteration of kind of the plan, what's happening, the event map again, and so just maybe check your emails that Thursday, Friday, and then we'll see you all Saturday at about 10:30.
All right.
I did register for the volunteer hours, but way too early. I didn't know when I clicked on that link at 10 AM or something for our volunteer hours. I think it's thinking I'm all day volunteering. I got a link saying, you're volunteering today. Click to get your hours.
Oh,
And I did it at like 10 AM and I'm like, oh shoot, I didn't need to do it for all this time.
I'll talk to Francine. I'm not actually the one who sent
Okay,
that out. That's
okay.
our volunteer coordinator, so I have to work with her on some of the setup.
Okay.
And it's kind of new this year, so,
Okay.
um.
And we were talking about maybe doing them at the end of every meeting.
Mhm.
So are you gonna walk us through that? Or what, is it too late?
I think for this one, we can do it for you.
Okay,
Like,
okay,
I
okay,
was just thinking it'd be nice if we did it at the end of the meeting, but it's easy for us to add it,
okay,
so.
okay.
I'll have
So
to
maybe
worry about
fix mine. I wanted to tell you that.
Okay.
So it looks like
It
I
gave you
volunteered
the
12
option
hours.
to put in a start time, and I put in start time at 5:45.
Yeah,
And
that's fine.
then, but then I guess now I put in an end time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm
If
gonna
there's
fix
any
that.
problems that you're having with that,
put it in.
forward stuff to me, let me
Okay.
know, and we wanna work with you, because it's kind of it's a different format from our typical volunteer events, so there's a little
Okay.
bit more finagling that we have to do
Okay.
to make it show up.
Okay.
Yeah. Reach out, I'm here to help.
Thanks.
Or at least I can have Francine help.
All right, is there any reason we need to look at the long-term calendar, or are we wrapping up?
I don't think so. You all know the bike and pedestrian plan is coming. We're kind of working on building that out so we can talk about that after Earth Day and the next meeting.
You know, last year we talked about doing a field trip to like a recycling facility or something of that nature. We never did, so maybe that's if there's interest, we could look at it. The problem is that would either take up our whole meeting or we got to do it a different day.
Yeah, it probably would be a meeting replacement, move it a little bit earlier, turn it into a special meeting. I kind of had that on my radar for maybe fall, once we've gotten through some of the summer event season, it's. very busy time for me, so I need to make sure I can coordinate. And then it won't be, sweltering outside when
Right.
we're trying to tour a waste facility, for example.
Yep.
So I'll probably take some comments at a future meeting on what you all would be most interested in, whether that's PSE, Republic, the water districts, the stormwater facility, and we can kind of take that as we go.
Water district, easy, it's just.
I would add, if you want to talk about field trips, the big wind farm over there by Vantage. PSC does, public tours. Almost daily, I think. Now, it's out of the way. but-
Well,
Right,
that
that's
might be a
field trip.
commission organized
Yeah,
barbecue.
that's all.
Arms over.
It's a serious field trip.
But
Do you need help sending out this to different, not this, but your electronic one to like the Kahani Facebook people or no? Remember you said you want us to send
Yeah,
stuff out
as much-
sometimes?
anytime that we have workshops coming
Okay,
up, events, even just information, I mentioned there's some e-bike incentives I got an email about that I'll share with
Okay,
you all.
okay.
Yeah, you are the not the ambassadors, you are the commissioners who are acting as implementers and advocates to the community. So send it to your HOA, send it to your neighbor, give it to your carpool
Okay.
friend. Yeah,
Okay.
And it's a little bit low tech, but actually, is that somewhere in the PDF? Like, is it possible to print out, because I put it on a few bulletin boards,
Yeah.
like in Starbucks or in grocery stores. And there's community boards.
Yeah, good idea.
And yeah, I'll put it up there, but the question is, where is this?
so it lives in the agenda packet, so you could
Okay.
either basically crop the agenda packet to be that only that one page, or I will make a note to email it to you. I'm out of the office tomorrow, so early next week or tonight if I get home. But
Okay,
it is also on the city website, so if you're tech savvy to like
Share.
save the image as a PDF, that works too. I pulled
Yeah.
this directly from the city website.
Screen print.
Exactly. That's what I do.
I did share something. I remember you liked it. I'm like, oh, yes, my face.
she beat me to it. I feel like we're both thinking about it.
That's funny.
All right, I make a
Right.
motion, we adjourn our meeting tonight.
A second.
All right. Passes by unanimous.